In the world of forensics, one must be thorough, but also transparent. On our last episode of Game Show Forensics, we had a lengthy chat about Chuck Woolery's interview on Fox and Friend. Almost immediately after that episode dropped, I had learned some things, and therefore, as a true forensic scientist, we must correct the wrongs. But in doing so, I assure you, this will be quite the adventure, as I had made some discoveries that take that discussion to a whole new dimension. So there is lots to unpack. So to my surprise, I was not expecting to do a follow-up on that story. However, there have been much revelation and many a discovery, believe it or not, that is so great for what this is. It's astounding and ridiculous. But first, allow me to introduce my new cocktail. And this combines the flavor of Krabby's, the alcoholic ginger beer from Scotland, which tastes just like ginger ale, but better. And a wee bit of Grand Garonne. It's orange and cognac liqueur. Just a dash. And then, what happens is, this becomes the orange crab. Screw it. Okay. First, a quick recap of what I said about Chuck Woolery's salary from the last episode of Game Show Forensics. Take a peek.
If I remember correctly, I think it was over like 30 grand or some small bump. And Merv just said no.
Now, it has come to light since that episode had dropped that the stakes were a bit higher. Chuck was not merely wanting a $30,000 bump, as I had said. According to Randy West, game show announcing legend Randy West, yes, that one, wrote a book called TV Inside Out: Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies. And it is a massive Bible of anything you wanted to know about celebrities. It is, from his perspective, working in the industry. There's a lot of shit in this book. And there is a whole section about this very topic. Chuck Woolery versus Merv Griffin and the epic battle of Modalas. So how much was Chuck making as the host of Wheel of Fortune in his 7th year? Lest we forget, Merv Griffin, the flamboyant talk show host, had owned the show. He created the show, produced the show, and he was the boss of the show. Chuck Woolery wanted a raise. Merv had declined. So Chuck Woolery went to NBC and tried to get them to kick in some money. And they actually agreed to do it. From the book. My best recollection of the figures Chuck shared along our drive had him earning in the neighborhood of $300,000. which is excellent money in 1980-81. It's an amount that people have celebrated winning on game shows. It's a nice round number, but Chuck wanted what his peers in the game show hosting community were making, such as Bob Barker, Richard Dawson, Peter Marshall. The presumption was they were all making $500,000.
$500,000.
$500,000.
$500,000.
$500,000.
$500,000.
$500,000.
For $500,000.
$500,000.
For $500,000.
$500,000. $500,000. $500,000. Okay.
$500,000.
All right. Settle down.
$500,000.
And so, Merv did not want to give him $500,000. $500,000. Yes, $500,000. And so, Chuck threatened to walk. And he walked. There, hence comes Pat Sajak. Okay. Now, what did Chuck think of Merv Griffin over time, after this had occurred? Are we to believe that it's no hard feelings, good old pals? Well, I've made mention before of Chuck doing subtle, light jabs at Merv Griffin, notably during his tenure at Scrabble in the mid-'80s to late 80s. On their own, when isolated, they may not be noticeable, but when strung together, the picture becomes quite clear. You may be familiar with photo mosaics, where when you look at one photo, it may very well be something like a grapefruit. But when you zoom out and see several more photos alongside it, the larger picture now becomes more clear that you're really staring at a penis. Thank you. And of course, the scientists at Game Show Forensics have been working very hard to gather the requisite clips to make this presentation that Chuck's thoughts of Merv Griffin were not just a passing fart of bitterness that had faded over time, but was a seedling that had, that had festered and grown into this gangly weed. I don't mean to overhype it, but it's fucking hilarious. So, stay tuned for that, because that will have to be part 2. First, we need to address the Pat Sajak shaped elephant in the room, and that is, have Chuck and Pat ever met before? Well, I know we had just discussed this, but let's have another look. Let's hear it from Chuck one more time. Have y'all met?
Years. I don't know Pat, by the way. We've never met.
Really? Oh yeah, Steve. Really?
Really?
I mean,
Yeah, really? Really? Really?
that's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe. Because it's not true. It's not fucking true. How do I know this? Well, like I say, in the world of forensics, research and accuracy is key to a successful solve. Now, what have we discovered? Or shall I say, what have we uncovered? Well, I know it's been a long time. So, in a way, some things are forgivable to forget. Such as when Chuck had misremembered how long ago it's been since he's hosted a game show.
Time to play bonus lingo with Heather and Robert.
But to say you've never met somebody, even if you've met them, it's okay. It's all right. You could do that. If you've just met them once in a mall, like on the escalator, that's okay. If you had a 5-second conversation 35 years ago, and that's all your interactions are limited to, then sure, forgot. Don't you think that if you not only were on someone's talk show as a guest, that you'd remember that, but what about when you had your own fucking talk show and you had him as a guest? There's a two.
Every Saturday morning at 2.
At least 2 documented instances where not only have they met, but they have sat together and talked in a talk show format. So that's
Boy, this is fucking ponderous, man. Fucking ponderous.
I guess you could maybe forget being on a talk show if you did 500 talk shows and they're all blending as, especially Pat Sajak's. Okay, but no, because this was his kind of rival replacement, or he was the root, yeah. And to go on, and in the 80s, he had no problem remembering this because he had anecdotes. Oh, he had anecdotes. Okay, so let's get to it. Because it's not only fascinating, it's also hilarious. Okay, so let's begin with a clip from Wheel of Fortune. This is from 2004. This is during the closing, where Pat and Vanna have 15 to 25 seconds of light banter. I simply call it the oy vey part of the show, because Pat has to be funny. He has to say silly shit, quips. It's burned inside him.
Jennifer Garner puzzle earlier. She was on the plane.
She was on the plane with me. She had her 2 young kids with her, and they were so good. So
that's not
thanks,
always
Jennifer.
true of celebrity children. In fact, I think Fox is starting a When Celebrity Children Attack show, which is kind of be looking for that.
Feels he's a comedian and a talk show host, and a game show host, all boiling in his head, sloshing around, and he needs to exert his talk show-esque humor, joke, quips, and this is his one venue, his one outlet to espouse these jokes, these witticisms. Go ahead, Pat. What you got?
You know, one of our players mentioned Chuck Woolery because his father had been on the show with Chuck years ago, and he was my predecessor here, for those who don't know. People think because we're on that there's some strange thing going on with Chuck, but he's a great guy.
People think that there's some sort of strange thing going on. Now, what does he mean by this? What is the strange thing that people in 2004, people think? Well, apparently, if you are going to go on television and say you've never met before, there's a thing. It's not people. There's a thing. Might be one-sided, but to pretend that you don't know it's a thing is just as bad as perpetuating the thing. Right? All right, Pat. take us home.
Chuck. And we don't exactly have to have a tag day. He's got like 19 shows on the Game Show Network, doesn't he? And we see him all over the place. Anyway, hello, Chuck. How you doing? Come see us sometime.
So that's another thing that I must retract from our last episode. I had said at the end of the show that I admired Pat for behaving throughout this whole ordeal. Throughout his entire career, I had said that we had never really heard him shit on Chuck Woolery. And for the most part, there was no evidence that he definitely didn't routinely do it. But did he do it? In the world of forensics, one must utilize probability to presume that in the span of 40 years, to a person who thinks they're hilarious and has fun things to say about everything, it stands a good chance that at least once you're going to bring it up. It's funny not in a Pat is funny way. It's funny that he's making this shit remark. Let's face it. He's playing it off like he's just being funny. Good old Pat, this talk show funsies. No, there was something that inspired the little jab. It's a little jab. Chuck Woolery is older than Pat Sajak, and he is the more veteran, dare I say, legend game show host. In comparison, I mean, yes, Pat Sajak has hosted Wheel of Fortune 41 years, great, but where's the range, right? He's done the talk show. But Chuck does have a wide variety of talents. And I mean that. I mean, I know he kind of had some fun with Chuck. Not like Pat has fun with him, but all kidding aside, the guy, he sang, he acted, he hosted several different kinds of shows. I mean, the guy was a good host. Better than Pat. I totally mean that. I kind of am having fun with Chuck because of his attitude towards things. That I just find it so funny. But putting all that aside, as a host, Chuck's the shit. I'm not saying that because there was any pressure or threats from anybody that might live 2 hours from me that saw Game Show Forensics and had a problem with my assessment of no, it didn't happen. But no, I'll be the first person to admit I fucking love Chuck as a game show host. And I hope that it wasn't lost on anybody that I admired him from my coverage of the last episode. It's just kind of ribbing a little bit on his statements is all. That's okay, right? But carry on, Pat.
We see him all over the place. Anyway, hello, Chuck. How you doing? Come see us sometime.
Yeah.
We'll do a puzzle. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Even that's patronizing. Come see us sometime. We'll do a puzzle. Then the fuck out. You think Chuck wants to do that? You think Chuck wants to come back and watch you host this shit that he used to host? Making all that money? No. So that was very patronizing. I know. Pat's hilarious. And he's just kidding. It was goddamn disrespectful, Pat. Patrick. Okay. But did you catch what he said? One more time.
He's a great guy, I know Chuck.
Yes.
We don't exactly.
All right, it's subtle, but he says the phrase, "I know Chuck." Okay. Well, Pat Sajak hosted a talk show called The Pat Sajak Show. It was a failed late-night talk show that was, what do you say, disgrace. It was pretty bad. It's actually one of the more notorious late-night talk show failures, usually lumped in with the Chevy Chase show when people talk about failed late-night talk shows. Now, from this clip, we don't know in what context Pat knows Chuck. He just says, I know him. Which I had assumed. But how well do you know him, Pat? Do you know him like I know him? Do you know him as a fan of game shows, growing up watching him? Or do you know him? Let's go back in time and hear what Chuck has to say about if he has ever met Pat Sajak. It's funny already.
Is this some kind of retribution for the night that I did this Pat Sajak show?
Yep. What? You went on Pat Sajak show. Do you have more, Chuck? Is there more?
Well, this has gone all over NBC and all over Griffin Productions, everything. Building on the letter O in Windblown,
Okay, so
6 letters in...
This is from July 25th, 1989. Airing of Scrabble. And he's referencing something that has apparently been blowing up at NBC and Griffin Productions. Really? What could that be? They had a game puzzle where it referenced Merv Griffin and how much money he has.
Building on the letter O in Windblown, 6 letters in the word. The clue is how much money Merv Griffin has.
Okay, so Merv Griffin was rich, sure, but in the conversation of the millionaires of the time, Merv Griffin would not really come to mind. I mean, he was known as being rich, sure, just like any other TV, like Aaron Spelling, Norman Lear. So there's an implication here that the puzzle was purposely written to give a little jab to Chuck, because apparently something recently had happened in the media that somehow evoked Merv Griffin's name in Chuck's life. Now, are we to believe the 2024 Chuck that he's never met Pat, or the 1989 Chuck that he was on his show? It stands to reason. Pat Sajak's show was in the late 80s, so I'm going to go with 80s Chuck here, Chuck, and say that Chuck was on the Pat Sajak show. So now, what else do you have to say, Chuck? Finish your thought.
Oodles.
That's right, oodles, yes. I heard the funniest thing, because I went on Pat Sajak show. Everybody else has seen this, and everybody's been talking about it. But and I talked about Mr. Griffin for a period of time. And it got around, they asked me why I left Wheel of Fortune. I told them I couldn't make a deal. Now the company line on the Griffin, you've got to listen to this. This is great. I left for religious reasons. I have no idea what that means. Okay. For religious reasons. I have no idea
little Johnny Carson,
means.
little...
Okay. I've got to listen to this. This is great. I left for religious reasons.
Yoink.
I have no idea what that means. Okay.
Okay. I mean, I don't know why the network would care if people knew that it really was a salary dispute. It's well documented. And he certainly doesn't shy away from the conversation of this. He's made it very clear this is what happened, so it's kind of stupid. If the network really was doing that, I haven't seen what he's talking about. But he's having some fun back at the networks and wants the audience to chuckle, have the guy push the laugh button. at the network. This is his only venue to do this. This is his only outlet to say fuck you back to NBC if they really are out there like trying to, downplay whatever he said on Pat's show. Anyway, here we have Chuck straight up saying that he was on Pat Sajak's show. So, let's pull up the episode, shall we? Well, that is way easier said than done. You see, as much of a disgrace as the Pat Sajak show was, there's very little evidence of it, clip-wise. There are a handful of clips out there. The first episode, I think the last episode, and a handful of ones in between. But there's no treasure trove of Pat Sajak clips from the Pat Sajak show. So there's an entire community worldwide of VHS tape collectors. And there's online groups where they discuss findings. I think some of them go to thrift shops, buy tapes, used tapes, and upload to the internet the found footage. A lot of it's from broadcast TV, local stations, where the internet seems to not have some of this footage. And while I have just become aware of this community, I have a place in my heart for people who have had the presence of mind to keep footage of raw shit for decades. When I was around 12, I was given a VHS VCR, and I recorded the shit out of it. I vividly remember being given blank VHS tapes, like a 10-pack, as a birthday present from some relatives, and I was thrilled. Because what that meant was there were now up to 80 additional hours of shit I could record. And that's the excitement of owning a VCR back then. And lest we believe that I recorded these programs because I merely wasn't home. Oh no, I was home. No, I was home. I was sitting right there. I would record things as they were unfolding because I had reasoned that what I'm watching perhaps might not ever air again. And a lot of these things didn't. There wasn't the internet where things would eventually wash ashore online, and not everything went into reruns. So there were occasions where you'd see something and you would never see it again. Ever. So there was always this fear that if I'm watching something that I found monumental, when would I ever see this again? I have to capture this. For whatever reason, I recorded a lot of shit. Just really random shit. A lot of stuff from the local DFW broadcast market. What I really thought was great to have were fuck-ups, like if a reporter stumbled on something, or if the chyron on the screen had a misspelling, any kind of errors that just kind of that we just moved on from and never got addressed again, didn't wash ashore any kind of bloopers compilation. It was just kind of lost to time. And to have clips of that, you felt like oh, you thought you got away with that fuck up, but I have it. As a teenager, there was a feeling of victory when you captured moments like that, and there were several. But among those, I also just taped theme songs to things and just random game show moments and just a ton of shit. And among the shit is the shittiest of the shit. So you would think that if Chuck Woolery appeared on the Pat Sajak show, at the very least I would have recorded that if I was around, if I was aware of it. This one in particular, I don't remember this happening. So that is the only reason why I'm second guessing if this exists at all. Because if it did exist, there's a chance I have it. Well, there's only one way to find out, is to look through my collection. These are 220 VHS tapes. You know, VHS tape is a bulky thing, really. They're not compact. They're, big old piece of plastic. And when you have hundreds of them, they take up a lot of space. They're a pain in the ass to just have. In my case, when my wife and I first got married, we lived in a small condo downtown. There was not room to store 220 VHS tapes anywhere in that place. We had a storage space where all our larger junk was, so it was likely in there. And as we progressed throughout our lives and we got a house, the tapes would just follow and be put in a space that had space for it, right? So let me just give you a quick idea of the struggle. And I assume a lot of these VHS collectors can relate to this struggle, but I didn't have any choice but to keep these tapes in a detached garage for a while. And during the extreme hot summers of Texas, this garage would heat up to about 115, 120 degrees sometimes. These tapes were in there year after year and baking. And then finally I discovered there was a way to kind of store things in our attic. So the tapes moved up to the attic, and that was even hotter. 125 on occasion. Extreme heat. And all this time, I'm worrying about the condition of these tapes because there were all these warnings about magnetic media, like any kind of audio cassette, VHS, reel-to-reel, 8-tracks, any kind of media with a tape would degrade over time. Even in normal, climate-controlled indoor conditions, tapes just degrade over time, apparently. And I had always had that in the back of my head. I mean, people would always say that, like, yeah, it's cool that you have all these tapes. I mean, this footage is going to be useless in like 10 years. You're not going to be able to watch it. A lot of sources said that. I just heard it all my life. And that even goes for floppy disks. There's a lot of 5 1/4 OG floppies, and then the later harder 3.5 floppies, where I had a bunch of little programs I made when I was like 10, 12 years old, and they were all stored on this magnetic media that everyone was saying is gonna just dissipate over time and become unreadable. So here I am, a collector of things and a collector of media and a programmer, and I have all this stuff that is dear to me stored on this media that everyone is saying is going to degrade and become unplayable at some point. And not in 100 years. I mean, 10, 15, 20 years is what people would keep saying. Like, these things would start to get worse and worse. And, I had these discs and all these tapes in the shittiest of conditions. Now, luckily, we never had a flood, or they never got wet, and I think that would really destroy pretty much anything. But they were kept in very hot, on occasion cold conditions. The rare times it would snow here, so they would be in a freezing garage or an attic. So, and we're talking over the course of 30 to 40 years, right? So not only do we have the time of 4 decades, but we have the worst weather conditions on both ends that these were stored in. So I had to just come to terms with the fact that whenever I got around to watching these again or doing something with them in the future, they might not play. So they said, well, fast forward to about 2022. I have an office space where I brought my VHS equipment here, and I had room to bring the tapes. It's air-conditioned building, so I thought maybe it would be nice to get them out of those extreme conditions, and there was room to bring them into storage here. I figured, since all my tapes are here, as I worked, perhaps I could just pop one tape in at a time into a machine, digitize the footage. I mean, it's 220 tapes. They're all recorded in SLP, which is the slow setting, which also meant the shittier or shittiest quality. So basically, when I would record something back in the day, if I played it back like a week later, I mean, there was already tracking and just kind of fuzz on the screen. It was not the best quality already. So tracking at the very least was always an issue for me. I mean, I prioritized quantity over quality, so I just wanted the ability to record more shit at the cost of lesser quality. Well, at SLP, that means that a single tape can hold up to 8 hours. So I figured, okay, if I'm here about 8 hours a day, just pop a tape in every day and just record away. You have to play it in real time in order to digitize it. Obviously, it has to play, and the software is just reading it on a capture card and basically recording it again, but in digital format. So I was able to do that. I was doing that one tape at a time. It was a little distracting. I'd glance over the screen and I'd see shit that I taped from when I was 15. Tried not to get too distracted by watching it. But the other problem was that at some point I'm going to have to watch it all if I am going to expect to know what's on all these tapes. I do have a log that I made when I was a child and when I first started doing this, and it's pretty funny. It's kind of cute. It's just my way of having an official record of my footage with little legends and a key that meant certain things. And that was fine for full TV shows, little TV movies, but I didn't often tape full TV shows. A lot of my footage are 10 to 45-second little cliplets of just junk, just stretched throughout the entire tape. I mean, sometimes I would be watching TV and just flip channels as I'm recording, just capture all sorts of random stuff. Sometimes I would stop, I'd see something weird, and I would stop and record it, and that's how that got on there. So to log that stuff, up to 8-hour tape of that would literally take me 8 hours to sit there and watch and type in what I'm seeing. I mean, now we're talking like months, like literal months of sitting there watching old TV just so I could know what's on these tapes. But whenever I glanced over at the screen, I would make note of what I was seeing just because I saw it. And at least I have that as an updated guide to some of these tapes that I did not log when I was a teenager, right? So even though they're already on their way to full disintegration and deterioration, to my shock, when I finally popped a VHS tape into the player, the first thing I noticed was the damn thing played, and the quality was just about the same as it was in the 80s. I mean, it wasn't great quality, but it wasn't as a result of it being in storage or just existing for all this time. It was just shitty quality that I came to expect from SLP recording. Same thing goes with my floppy diskettes. The diskettes! They loaded fine when I put them into a floppy reader. I mean, they worked. So these bullshit naysayer tech experts that would be saying all this shit, they made these presumptions based on nothing. And I'm sure there are some technical reasons why some scientists, not forensic scientists, had warned that all this media might not work in the future. But from what I see, at this rate, I don't see why these tapes would not play another 40 years from now, making them 80 years old. It's weird. But I mean, there's no evidence at all that for 40 years they still are in the same condition they were when I first got them. So it's absurd. Liars, charlatans, non-scientists, disgrats, maroon. I noticed when I was thumbing through my tape footage and building a log, there was an unusual amount of clips from the Pat Sajak show. Actually, I used the wrong word. I will say a disturbing amount of clips from the Pat Sajak show. And so, interestingly enough, when I saw Chuck say I was just on his show, the first thought I had was, I'll just look this up. And so I found this master list of presumably all of the guests that have been on the Pat Sajak show. And there was no Chuck Woolery or Charles Woolery listed. But Googling this further, in the name of forensic research, it had revealed that perhaps there were overtones, a hint that Chuck Woolery may have been a guest on the same episode as a one Geraldo Rivera and Dana Delaney. Perhaps Chuck was a late replacement? Why was he not mentioned on this otherwise pretty concise-looking guest list of guests from the Pat Sajak show. And by the way, check out the April 28th episode. Remember, this is a 90-minute show. One guest. Bobcat Goldthwait. The fuck could you have an hour and a half of that fucker? I'm gonna try to emulate Pat's witticisms. The fuck did you say to that guy? So, Bobcat, is that your real name? Alright. So, the search was on for this elusive Geraldo Rivera / possible Chuck episode. Episode 73, baby, aired April 25th, 1989. A key date in game show history, apparently. Because he was on that show. But how? How am I going to acquire this footage of such a very obscure, not oft talked about or lauded talk show? Well, who was the premier source of Pat Sajak's show footage that I know personally? Let me think. Me. It turns out, when I opened up the log, I see the Pat Sajak show 1,000 times. I've taped the shit out of that shitty show. Well, it wasn't looking good in the beginning because there were no returns for Chuck Woolery in my log of VHS tapes that I had encoded for the last year and a half. However, there were a handful of tapes that appeared to be skipped. I have a lot of information on tape 17, which from all appearances, from the shit that appears to be on it, is likely 1989-ish. Tape 19, which I have a scant amount of information for, references Star Search, which is all over the internet, and I was able to presume that tape was late 1989. What is on tape 18? Well, it stood to reason that if I had this footage at all, there is a 10% chance that it is living on tape 18. Because that falls within the right window of time where this potential appearance on the Pat Sajak show could have occurred. I didn't know, and I don't remember seeing Chuck Woolery on the Pat Sajak show as something that I don't recall it. So I was, in the back of my head, I was doubting that I had this. But a true forensic scientist will always believe in the possibilities of the small percent chance. Because the law of probability says if there's a 10% chance of something, it's possible. And so, the only thing to do is just pop tape 18 into the machine and let it rip. What do we got? So here I was, excited that I might stumble upon this elusive footage, but at the same time dreading that I might be sentencing myself to at least 7 hours of watching small fragments of static-filled shit clips from the 80s of things I was into when I was 14, 15. However, upon the beginnings of this tape, some things started to reveal themselves to where we were closing in on this potential date of the Geraldo Rivera episode of the Pat Sajak show had aired. The first clue, after skipping through mind-numbing clips of local Dallas-Fort Worth news bits, I had spotted a peculiar sight, and that is of the illustrious songstress Carole King. Carole King has a loose personal connection to moi. Don't know her. However, my mother had attended Madison High School in Brooklyn, New York. This fucking school, holy shit, it is the high school to the stars. In their yearbook alone, you got your Judge Judy, you get your Bernie Sanders, you get your Joel Zwick, producer of Laverne and Shirley and Full House, among others.
Chuck Schumer, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Tons of Nobel Prize winners, even NFL players, MLB players. It's crazy. And you have my mother. Even in years before and after my mother's time there, it's just a veritable institution of celebrity learnings. And so my mother and Carole King were in the same class. So they were really good pals, and it was always fascinating for me to see her career skyrocket as it did. Of course, it was already legendary status before I was even born, but to see somebody that is the level of Carole King in the music industry, the fact that she was friends with my mom, it's cool. I don't know. So I taped Carole King's appearance on David Letterman, which was April 21st, 1989. So I knew if there was a scintilla of a chance that I was going to have this footage, it's going to be on tape 18. Now, the Carole King on Letterman footage aired 4 days before the Pat Sajak show in question had aired. And suddenly, as if I made it through a clearing of a jungle in Vietnam, through the tracking, I see Pat Sajak's forehead. And I knew. Oh, I knew. I knew we hit gold, baby. No fucking shit!
Please welcome nice fellow, Chuck Woolery.
I assume I might be the very first person on the planet that had ever celebrated with champagne the discovery of surprise ownership of a Pat Sajak show clip. Oh, but there were celebrations. This was the game show equivalency of an Egyptologist discovering a new civilization as they pick through layers of Earth. It's that big of a deal. This was fucking crazy. I mean, here I have recruited the forensic team to try to find this elusive footage to no avail. Not that they're not good at what they do. These fuckers are the best. They will find shit. You have an episode of, say, The Price is Right, and you know nothing else about the episode but perhaps the color of Bob Barker's tie, and maybe a burnt-out light bulb in the background on the lower left of door 2. These fuckers will not only tell you the air date, the games that were played, they'll tell you the address and blood type of the fucker that won that show. That is how professional the crack team of forensic scientists that work at game show forensics are. And God bless them. They do God's work. But they couldn't find it. So that means this clip is way more rare and elusive than I had imagined. It's not lost on me how absurd it is to celebrate the discovery of a Pat Sajak show clip. But because of the effort involved and looking for it online with scores of people, only to find out that I had it in my VHS collection the entire time. It was an amazing feeling. Sad as that is. But I have it. So, without further ado, we take you now to tape 18. Footage from my collection, recorded as a teenager. Perhaps the only known footage of Chuck Woolery as a guest on the Pat Sajak Show. I didn't watch this. I only scanned the first few moments of it just to make sure that I had it in its entirety, but I did not watch it because I wanted to talk it through with you. So, here we go.
Silver's Nation, NBC's Scrabble. Actually was the original host of Wheel of Fortune when I went on the air in 1975, and then I replaced him, and then, boy, the show really took off. Didn't you think so, Chuck? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome nice fellow, Chuck Woolery.
Okay. I'll check that out. It's Geraldo. All right, so check out Tom Scott's little version of the Scrabble theme. That's pretty fucking cool. Tom Scott. Not that Tom Scott. Oh, hey. I know you, Bob. What's up? The other Tom Scott was Pat Sajak's band leader. And while the unfortunate gigs of the Pat Sajak Show and the Chevy Chase Show were his late night talk show band leader opportunities, this guy is a theme song and sax solo legend. He was chosen as one of 10 saxophonists to play at Clinton's inauguration, because Clinton was a sax player, and they had a cool little thing introed by Will Smith, but it's 10 saxophone players, and they all do like a couple of bars of like smooth jazz riff shit. He was chosen as one of the 10, living sax legends, which is an honor, I imagine. And there he is, just cranking out sixlets and triplets and 30-second note riff shits, and I mean, the guy's a quality sax player, right? So I could have picked any song as Chuck's walkout. I mean, I guess Love Connection is what he's more known for among the mainstream, but pure game show purists love him for his time on Scrabble. Scrabble kind of gets shelved to the back burner of game shows when there's game show discussion, but not only was it a great show, it had a badass theme song. And for Tom Scott to take that theme song and kind of make it like a little ska rendition, that's not only impressive to me, it shows that someone was a Scrabble fan enough to have that be the song and then make a cool little ska rendition of it. Very few people are going to notice that kind of shit, but I dig it. Tom Scott, great shit. All right. Let's hear that one more time. Very good, Tom Scott. Carry on, gentlemen.
I'm just funning. Actually, when you did the show, it was a daytime show, and they hadn't started the nighttime show, which is what really...
No, the nighttime show did take off as the daytime did originally.
Yeah, actually it was a big hit.
The first numbers on Wheel of Fortune the first week were a 38, and it went to a 42. Those were the first 2 weeks on the air, so it was a big
Did you ever figure it out, what made it work?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
I think what probably makes most game shows successful, if they're really, truly successful, and that is, of course, the home audience can play. And they can play at any time. They can come on any time during that half hour and play. Plus the fact that there are 3 people playing the same game, and when you're in the home audience, you're always ahead of them.
Fucking watch.
Because you get to play for 3.
I know, it's true.
And I think that's, well, you become brilliant in your own home.
One question I've wanted to ask you since I've known you.
What?
Does that watch hurt? It's the biggest damn watch I've ever seen there.
Well, you know, this is, there's a story behind this watch that I'll tell you someday. I did not buy this. This was a gift to me from one of my very good friends in Palm Beach, Florida, and I never take it off because he gave it to me.
Speaking of...
But it does hurt. Oh, yes.
Yeah, what would you like here?
Kind of like to get in on this.
Good. This is called...
wait a minute. I want to pick my
I haven't shown you what this is. Wait, this is Earthquake in a Can. Watch this. What? Earthquake in a Can.
Talk show bits.
That's very nice.
99 cents.
Yeah, but being a former host of Wheel of Fortune, I've always been very partial to ceramic.
Okay, good. All right, you can have that.
I'll take the chicken.
Happy to do it.
Now, I'll put this close to you. The CBS chicken.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Kind of like the RCA dog.
I appreciate that. Now, so 2 shows, they're both going great, so people recognize you everywhere you go, right?
Well, yeah, they do. They seem to recognize me more since Wheel of Fortune's on. I was in Beverly Hills not too long ago, and I had a Ferrari, a real pretty Ferrari that now my father-in-law owns.
Right. All right. When I met Chuck, I don't like telling this story because it shattered my childhood admiration for the man. But when I was taping the Lingo Tournament of Champions in 2007, Chuck seemed a bit impatient, and not to me, but during the taping of Lingo, there were a couple of board malfunctions and just technical issues that seemed to delay the completion of the taping. And he was getting a little more impatient at the crew over this. It seemed like he was in a hurry, or like he had somewhere to go. And when the taping was over, Heather and I and our opponents were just mingling in the garage on the way out. And I think it was a Lamborghini. Not 100% sure, but a car like that just peels out of the parking lot. And we all just kind of jump back, and it's Chuck. He's like tearing out of. He couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. He's like, and it's funny. So so the man likes sports cars. That's cool, and he likes his flashy gold watches, as we've seen over the years on Scrabble. There was always a close-up shot of his wrist when he would hand out money. And the one thing that almost blinded the cameraman was this fucking shiny Rolex. And I mean, the guy was known for his bling. God bless him. Looked good, but I mean, it is not a surprise that he wants us to know that a Ferrari was involved, even though it's likely not going to be relevant in this story. Let's take a look.
I drove it down. There's a store called, well, it doesn't matter. There was a store. I don't want to plug everybody in town, but I parked in front of the store.
But that's why we're here.
Well, I guess so. Anyway, I was walking up and down the street doing some shopping, and people had VCRs and cameras, and I mean, it was just crazy. I had never had the impact of people on me in public like that, and especially in my hometown. So it went on and on and on, and finally I ducked into this one store, and I said, gee, what in the world is going on here today? And the guy said, well, there's a couple of tour buses that came in, and they dropped these people off, and they're taking pictures, and I mean, it was outrageous. So I said, well, thank you. So I got my stuff, and I went out to my car, and as I came out to my pretty car, there was this guy with a camera, and he said, do you mind if I take a picture? And I thought, well, maybe one more. And so I said, sure.
Okay, I see where this is going. It's going to be... All right. Apologies. I guess the plug of the fancy car is going to be the punchline to the story. He wanted to take a picture of the car. Okay.
So I struck a pose, and he said, would you mind moving out of the way?
Actually, the car, huh?
He could have cared less. He wanted the car.
Boy, they can bring you down fast.
Oh, quick, boy, that big humbler.
When you did Wheel, one of the expressions I remember you using all the time was it dumber than a, what was it?
Dumber than a red brick.
Yeah.
You can't get much dumber than a red brick.
Do you have carry a lot of those homilies around?
Actually, I don't. My mother is the one who is she began all of these things in my life. There was a guy who used to come into town. My father had a called General Sales. It was a little, I got a plug in for him. It was a little, you know, what do I want to say? Fountain of supplies and fountain equipment and candy and things.
Time's up.
Thank you. And a guy came in from New York called Cadillac Jones, and obviously he drove a Cadillac, and he had this Texas hat, this big hat on all the time. And I figured anybody who had a Cadillac had to be rich, and so one day I came in and I talked to Mother, and I was working in the storeroom, and I said, "Gee, what's the story on Cadillac Jones?" My mother had a way of summing everything up, boiling down she could boil it down real quick.
Yeah.
She said, well, what do you want to know about him? I said, well, is he rich? Is he, what is he? She said, oh, honey, he's just all hat and no cattle. And she could put things in perspective with a phrase, and so I began to pick up a few of these things. She told me one time, I told me somebody being drunk, and she said, oh, it's a high they could duck hunt with a rake.
Where are you from?
I'm from Ashland, Kentucky, the northeastern part of Kentucky, which is not the glamorous part of Kentucky, which is the southwestern part of Kentucky. Thank you. There's one person
who's heard of it.
Incidentally, there is a park in Ashland, Kentucky, named after Chuck Woolery, and there is a street, Chuck Woolery Way, that runs right through it. And I just thought it's kind of funny to have your home address be on Chuck Woolery Way. And whenever I see like a dopey street name, I always kind of picture having to read that out when you're making, say, like hotel reservations or subscribing to something. You have to say over the phone, 1205 Chuck Woolery Way. And they'd be like, Chuck Woolery? Like the host of Scrabble? Yes, that one. Anyway, carry on.
I was born 60 miles from Loretta Lynn's front door.
60 miles? The fucking radius of 60 miles is like several municipalities. I was born in Staten Island. I suppose I was born within 60 miles of like 10 trillion celebrities, right? Okay. 60 miles. All right, go ahead.
Really? Yes,
and we talk like that.
That's right.
And in order to talk like that, you got to look like that.
When did you stop talking like that?
As soon as I started looking like that. Took that expression off my face, and bingo, the accent went.
Did you knew Miss White before I did?
I did. I met Vanna her first day in town, as a matter of fact.
All right,
stop. Will you? I met her casually at dinner at someone's home. And we talked. Her opening remark to me was, Mr. Woolery, I used to watch you on television when I was a little girl.
Oh, you love that.
I choked her for about 3 minutes, and the color came back into her face. But anyway, that's how I met Vanna.
Yeah, did she express any desire to go on to?
No, she hadn't.
She expressed any desire at all?
There was a slight desire, but not much. But anyway, later on, over about 6 months, I guess 6 months later, she was up for the show, and I told her what to do to get on the show.
Yeah? And what advice?
I told her to make sure that Merv Griffin and no one knew that they knew me at all, that she had no relationship with me and didn't know me. Yeah. And it helped her a great deal, I think.
Yeah, it is good advice. Chuck is staying around, but I think Geraldo has to run. We don't want to make you late.
Leaving? I got to pick up my kid.
Oh. You gotta pick up your kid.
What? You can just say you got to go, and it's okay.
There's everybody else.
It's these hard hitting. Great having you here, Geraldo. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break, and we'll let you go during our commercial. Don't forget your award. And great having you here. Thanks, Geraldo, very much. Geraldo Rivera, folks.
He's fucking taking off in the middle of a... Okay, so in the 80s, traditionally, late night talk shows, the first guest has their segment, and then they scoot down the couch and sit there while the second guest comes on, and sometimes can interject, laugh along. Third guest comes out, everyone scoots down one. Everyone stays on the set until the show is over. maybe during commercial they might slip out if they had to really go, but to announce on air, Geraldo has to go like he's bailing out of a timeshare dinner at Chili's. He's like, oh, I gotta go get my kid. When you're being asked to appear on a talk show, you think that the schedules would have been cleared. And do you have an hour to go on a late night TV talk show and plug your shit? Can you chill for an hour? Pretty sure if you said I gotta go get my kid, then they would have figured out how to schedule around that or had him on a different episode. And then, to bail in the middle of a show is something I have not seen and is a little embarrassing, actually. I think it's a statement on, this shit's boring me. These two game show dorks are going to talk it up, and I have nothing to add to this. There's no Al Capone vault to pop opened. And so he had to go get his kid. All right, Geraldo. Take off. Hope you get your kid. Jesus. All right. Oh yes. So what do you think so far? It's weird. They're just talking. I imagine there was an effort to show that there was no hard feelings, and this is a perfect way to do this. It doesn't sound like Chuck's promoting anything here. He hasn't mentioned Scrabble yet. I guess in the... Yeah, so he's in the middle of hosting it. It's 89. But it just seemed like the intent of this was to clear up any perception of bad blood. All right, so we're back from commercial.
We're back. Chuck Woolery is here. We're talking about Nashville during commercial. You spent some time there. You did some recording.
I was there. I was with 4 major labels and had 1 major hit.
That's right. I know that. I actually have your record at home.
You're kidding.
No, Avant-Garde.
I don't think I have it.
Well, perhaps you'd like to borrow it. I thought maybe buy it. The group was Avant-Garde.
Yeah, the group was the Avant-Garde. There were 2 of us.
Was it the Avant-Garde? I just thought it was Avant-Garde.
Actually, it could have been Avant-Garde, as a matter of fact.
It's like Village People,
yes,
not the
Village People. It was Avant-Garde.
Yeah, and the hit was called?
Naturally Stoned.
Yeah. And
it was kind of a pre-drug. Well, now don't snicker. It was kind of a pre-drug, anti-drug thing, and
I can feel those good vibrations.
Yes, that was back in the Beach Boys days when you could feel vibrations and stuff.
Do you miss singing? Do you get to do any at all?
Yeah, no, I don't do it anymore. Well, the last time I sung on national television, well, no, that's not true. No, that's not true, so I won't say that. I don't miss it. Well, I did it for so many years, and my career kind of rode the crest of an undertow after Naturally Stoned.
Did your mom come up with that one?
No, that was actually Roger Miller, but I stole from him. I steal from everybody.
Sure.
But, it just didn't work out, and instead of hammering away at it, I decided that perhaps I could talk better than I could sing, and sure enough.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you something. People come up to me and say, boy, I bet Chuck looks at the success of Wheel and wishes he hadn't left that show.
This is 100% Pat projecting his own thoughts on Chuck. I mean, this is a subtle gloat. It's almost a sick burn. He's basically roasting Chuck. He wants to, what possible response could Chuck have to that, but to deny and say, it's fine. But this might be where the Merv Griffin mention comes into play. And I think, based on what I'm going to show you shortly, we might need to buckle in.
I know that's not true because I know at the time you felt that was what you want to do, and obviously things are going great for you. And can you talk about that time at all?
Well, the time of Wheel, when it kind of came to an end?
Yeah, you were there for 7 years.
I was there for 7 years. My contract was for 7 years. And, of course, the show was incredibly successful. It was not near the intensity of success as the syndicated show brought to it.
Right.
But it always had been the #1 show on the network to that time. And I just had an impasse with the Griffin organization to make compensation. And
you're kidding.
Well, you see, everybody knows that. I mean, he said he ran a real stripped-down, sleek operation. Well, it was, the only problem was...
I'm just here to make trouble.
He put all the weight on. We couldn't get any weight. So I made a hard left there and was real happy to do it.
I'm glad I got into that. Well,
tell it like it is.
I admire that. Geraldo would admire that if he were here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should. Of course, you still work for him. I know. So I'm going to change.
So you
subjects.
have to really change the subject and get on to something else.
Real quickly.
Well, why did you fucking ask if you're afraid that Merv is watching and is going to have some kind of reaction to this? Let's consider the intent of that question. Sure, everybody was curious to know what was going through Chuck's mind, and even to this day, especially now that Pat is retired and some of the stuff has resurfaced, there's a curiosity. What was the big deal? What was the amount of money we're talking here? Why did Merv not want to give him a raise? Why did Chuck throw this opportunity away? So it's curious. It's a typical American success story, diva, shit going to your head, ego type of deal. And so, yes, there's a curiosity among many people about what exactly happened. It almost, but for the person to ask that question, be the guy that took his place and eventually reaped tens of millions for that. It feels disingenuous. I know that they're giggling and all that, but it just seems like a punk move to ask that question. Maybe Chuck was prepped in advance that question was coming. So he had a very smooth answer, but Pat still at this moment at the time of this taping, and Pat still is hosting that show. So it's weird from that perch to sit there and go, how do you like shit now that you fucked up this opportunity? And it's not bring up the fact that I'm the one still reaping the benefits from your fucking up, Chuck. But how does it feel? Like, what were you thinking? That's weird. That's not common. Okay. Continue.
I can really pound this right into the ground.
No, that's hoisted by your own petard, I think that's called. Now,
Geraldo started it.
He did.
He was a little intense, so I'm getting intense.
Yeah, that's good. I like this. I like controversy. Now, but we're going to change the subject anyway. Okay. Oh, you really have some water.
Oh, thank you.
Golf. Let's talk about golf. That's a safe subject. You've become a golf nut, haven't you?
Merv used to play golf. We played together. I have the fondest regard for Mr. Griffin. I'll say that, but I want to say that.
You have the fondest regard for Mr. Griffin. Do you? Because your actions on Scrabble suggest otherwise. Stay tuned for that. Let's hear the rest of what they have to say about it.
I have the fondest regard for Mr. Griffin.
I'll say that.
But I want to say that.
No, I know you do.
Because he did, in fact, find me.
That's right.
He wouldn't let me go. Golf. Golf.
What?
Golf.
Oh, yeah,
They'll
golf.
bring you back. Golf.
Is his segment up yet?
No, it's never ending.
Yeah. You're out there like every day.
And this is late in life. I'm in middle age in case I happen to hit, 89 or 100. So I started late in life, and it does something. Golf is a very strange game. After 2 or 3 months, it's like a narcotic. You have to have more.
So what are you trying to accomplish? I've tried it. I've been out there, and it never captured my...
well, it's because you didn't do it long enough.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do? Just beat yourself all the time?
You're playing against the course, not yourself. Yeah. Against not other people, but the course. It's also a game that's wonderful because no matter what level you play at, you can handicap and play against anyone.
That's true.
And that's kind of boring, though. Well, you always get the concept of some kind of, cigar-smoking, fat-bellied guy running around with a little hat on going,
Yeah, I've seen you.
serve him up, Roy, and that's not what golf is.
So do you wear, like, little nice checkered pants?
I do, indeed. I have the Payne Stewart look. I wear the +4s, and I have a little funny hat that I wear. And,
yeah. It sounds adorable.
It's not.
Yeah. Anyway, congratulations.
This is it?
Great.
This is the end?
Yeah, and not a moment too soon.
I have to move down on the...
Maybe the end for all of us.
He wasn't aware that was coming. Okay, so well, I guess since Geraldo had vacated the spot, then the couch is yours, Chuck.
We cut this real short. Yeah, we booked other people in the building to come on and fill up the rest of the A couple of members of the audience to come down and sing later. No,
that wouldn't be a surprise.
Oh, no, that's your allotted time.
Oh, okay.
That's it. But it's great having you here.
It's been real nice being here.
What do you have? Would you like to stay?
Well, yeah, Chuck doesn't have shit to do, right? He can stay. Geraldo, he's got to go get his kid. Chuck's got all fucking night, baby. Let's hang out.
It's been real nice being here.
What do you have? Would you like to stay? And perhaps you could add to something?
Yeah,
all right. But don't talk.
Okay.
All right.
So I just sit on the couch and look this way occasionally and go...
Yeah, that's not... If someone says something amusing, just laugh. But no more references to anybody we know.
All right.
Chuck Woolery, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Take a break. Glenn Hirsch will be out in a moment. Coming down.
Okay, well, that's it. Guess I must have switched over to Johnny to check out the comedic stylings of Jonathan Winters. Okay, well, there we have it. Chuck had appeared on the Pat Sajak Show. Fascinating. Is it possible that Chuck completely forgot that experience 35 years later? Perhaps. So let me ask again. Have you met Pat Sajak, Chuck?
Years. I don't know Pat, by the way. We've never met.
Really? No, really. Tape 18 evidence says otherwise. That's right. That's right. Didn't mean to go out of my way to disprove Chuck Woolery. But spent a good 15 minutes on this guy's show and forgot that. Now, interestingly enough, Chuck Woolery also had a talk show. Now this is a lot more obscure.
Now, are you a natural screamer, or did you have to practice to do this?
I've never practiced.
And we'll be right back in 2 and 2.
Apparently there were 65 episodes, but there are 0 online that I or my crack squad of forensic researchers have found. The actual show itself, the meat of the show, interview portions, monologue, seem to not be existent online. However, it appears that Pat Sajak was a guest on the Chuck Woolery Show. So, yes, they both traded appearances on each other's shows. Maybe they didn't hang out, have dinner, but at the very least, they were on each other's shows. That is less forgettable than if they had had dinner once or ran into each other in the hallway or whatever. I mean, this is an appearance on a television show. No matter how much shit you've done, I wouldn't think that you would just forget that. Especially when Chuck is being interviewed now by Steve Doocy about his legacy and his history. He's expected to recall details of his time taping game shows, doing things in the 80s. So to suggest that he has never met Pat Sajak implies that either A, he completely forgot, or B, he didn't want to make it like they were friends. And by denying that he was on Pat's talk show, somehow sold that. And certainly Chuck is aware that the internet is a thing and people can look this up. And now it was a challenge to find. I mean, maybe I can't imagine Chuck sitting there Googling. Maybe he had an assistant Googling to see if there was evidence of him on the Pat Sajak show. And funny enough, in that website where I could not find Chuck's name in the guest list, it's almost as if he was wiped from it. I mean, at first I was thinking maybe he was a late replacement for a segment that bailed. I mean, hell, if Geraldo can go pick up his kid, then I assume other celebrities might have just outright bailed on their appearance altogether. And as a late replacement, they had Chuck Woolery. But it just seemed after watching it seemed a little more prepared and a little more intentional. And, for all intents and purposes, it wasn't a stellar interview, but it was an interview on par with all the Pat Sajak interviews I've seen. I've seen quite a few. Now, I'm going to have to reload here because part 2 of this is how much bad blood was there between Chuck and Merv? And how did Chuck address this, if he ever did? Oh, did he? Oh, did he?
On the next episode of Game Show Forensics, Chuck Woolery embarks on a marathon-length screed of passive-aggressive mockery towards Merv Griffin for 30 fucking days straight. But in the end, will Merv Griffin get the last laugh? Who will win? Or do we all lose? We attempt to reach out to the winner of the 1989 Scrabble Summer Sweepstakes to settle the score. And special guest and game show announcing super legend Rich Fields joins us on this very special episode of Game Show Forensics.